Okay, grade 12s, let's look at the quadratic number pattern. The quadratic, one of my favorite patterns, the quadratic number pattern from grade 11 days. You're going to always be tested on this, so it's very worthwhile. Remember, this is no longer bn plus c, that's linear. So the moment you have that, remember that was linear, or the other word is arithmetic. Okay, but the moment we plonk in an an squared, this now becomes, that whole thing becomes what we call quadratic. Okay, now you need this. Now, when we get to sequences and series, we've got the linear or arithmetic, we've got the quadratic, but there'll also be a geometric where we keep multiplying by a number. But don't worry about that. That's for sequences and series. Let's revise the quadratic number pattern from grade 11. You're going to need this. Okay, it's a term. It's basically got the general term an squared plus bn plus c, and we need to find a, b, and c when we want the general term. Okay, so let's have a look at an example of a quadratic. If you remember, maybe you've forgotten this, you can always go back to Moby School grade 11 where we do the quadratic in a lot of detail. Now have a look at this. If you look at this, if we get the difference between the first two terms, term 2 minus term 1 is 3. Then the difference here is going to be definitely, if you think about it carefully, is 3. There's going to be 5 there. You see, I was still thinking, hey, maybe it's the same. It's not. Look at that. It's 10 minus 5 is 5. Then we've got 7, which is going to give you 7 there. Do you see? And this is going to give you 9. So it's not a linear, because in a linear pattern, you've got a constant first difference. But look at this. When you get a constant second difference, this is quadratic. Okay, it's a quadratic number pattern. There's your first difference row. Actually, the first difference row is linear because you keep adding 2. You see this piece here, these 2 rows at the bottom are linear, but if you go to the quadratic, it's got a constant second difference. And I'm going to go straight to the method that we used in Moby School in grade 11. You can go and check it out in the notes, the lessons in grade 11. Okay, and remember that this is 2a, that was 3a plus b, and this was a plus b plus c, if you remember. Okay, boy meets girl. Okay, it's very amorous. They're in love. Okay, and that's wonderful. They're at a coffee shop and they're looking into each other's eyes. Boy meets girl. Then suddenly along comes the guy's friend. And you know the saying, 2's a company, but 3's a crowd. And the friend comes to talk to the boy about soccer. And, wow, 2's a company, 3's a crowd. So 3a is bad. Okay. And then, of course, the girl gets upset and decides she walks out. She dislikes both of them now. And then the two boys dislike each other. So they all become up here unlike terms, a plus b plus c. Good way to remember this. Okay. Moby School grade 11 lessons have all of this in. Okay, we're just revising this now. Okay, so how did we approach getting the general term? Well, remember we said 2a is 2. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then also 3a plus b was equal to 3, and a plus b plus c was equal to 2. So we equate all of those. So this 2a is 2, 3a plus b is 3, and a plus b plus c is 2 there. Okay, it's a quadratic pattern. Divide both sides by 2, and you get a is equal to 1. So there's your a. Then you remember you replace a into there. Okay, into that one. Then you've got 3 plus b is 3, so b is equal to 0. Then a goes into here as 1, b is 0, plus c is 2, and then that gives you 1 plus c is 2, and subtract 1 from both sides, and c was in fact 1. So remember the general term was an squared plus bn plus c, so the nth term was 1n squared plus 0n plus 1. And then what do we know? That tn is n squared plus 1, and that is the general term. And that can help us to generate any specific number of terms. Say I said to you, what is the third term? You would say 3 squared plus 1, which is 10. And look at that. The third term is in fact 10, which is great. There it is. And using n squared plus 1, quadratic. Okay, now let's have a look at another example quickly, just to clarify this. So here's an example 2. I'm going to give you this number pattern: 2, 13, 32, 59 going on. And I want you to, number one, I want you to okay, we can do that. We can determine what I want you to do to the next two terms. The next two terms there, determine the next two terms, and the nth term. Okay, and the nth term or the general term there. And then B, I want you to find or determine the 160th term of that number pattern. Well, let's see, what are the next two terms? Well, let's write it down and get the nth term. So let's write this down. So here's our number pattern. We've got 2, 13, 32, and 59. Okay, now let's see what it is. Well, there's definitely a difference there of 11. This is going to give us 19, and this is going to give us 27. Let's check. 32 minus 13 is 19. Okay, 59 minus 32 is 27, so it works. And this gives us a constant second difference of 8. Okay, so it's definitely quadratic. Now, how do we then get the next two terms? Well, what we could do is we could add 8 to 27, which of course gives us 35, and then add those two. What's 59 plus 35 is 94. There we go. Now we can do it again. Add 8 to 35 gives you 43, and add 94 and 43, and you get 137. So these are the next two terms. Okay, the next two terms of the sequence, the quadratic sequence. Okay, and then how do we get the nth term? Boy meets girl, 2a. Friend comes along, 2's a company, 3's a crowd, that's bad. They all separate and dislike each other. Okay, so let's see that. 2a is 8, so a is equal to 4. There we go. And then we've got 3a plus b is equal to 11. I'm in heaven. So that's 3 times 4 plus b is equal to 11, because in goes the 4. And then it's 12 plus b is 11, so b is equal to negative 1. 11 minus 12. Okay, then we've got a plus b plus c, and that is going to equal 2, because that's the first term there. Sorted there. Great. Okay, and then we can plug in the value of a, which is 4, plus the b, which is negative 1, plus c is 2. 4 minus 1 is 3, plus c is 2, and then c would be negative 1 if you bring that across. So what's the general term? an squared. A is 4. 4n squared. What's the b? The b is negative 1, so it's negative 1n, subtract 1, and there is your general term. Okay. And then what? So that's your nth term, and the b part is they want the 160th term. So let's see, that's 4 times 160 squared minus 160 minus 1, and let's see, what does that come to in a calculator there? 4 multiplied by 160 squared minus 160 minus 1, and we come to an interesting number there. What would that be? Let's just check there. It's going to be 102,239. 102,239. There we go. Awesome. Okay, guys, I think it's time for you to do a little practice example on the quadratic number pattern. Use this method. It's absolutely brilliant. And remember, if you're not sure of what I'm doing, you're in grade 12 and you're battling with this, you're saying, hey, guy, you're going too fast. Go back to grade 11 notes on Moby School and practice that. We go into a lot of detail, but master this. It's important that you know this for matric. So